Hey, welcome back to day two of our interview with head coach from Tusculum University, Eddie Pennington. In today's episode, we talk about the growth of boys volleyball, not only in Eastern Tennessee, but across the country. We look at how he really feels that, boys especially need some recruiting guidance. And we really discuss the fact that there are a lot of opportunities out there for boys volleyball, but when you're kind of in your state and you're playing, it's hard not to just see the schools that are kind of in your little bubble and not realize that there's schools sprinkled across this entire country that are promoting boys volleyball and trying to grow the game. So lastly, he talks about really then how do we grow that at the high school level. So we'll kind of touch on that and we'll talk about it afterwards. So let's jump right back into this interview.
That's awesome. It's interesting. You touched about the bondness a team can create, and Coach Miles mentioned it. We both went to Pacific, and we did have guys from Hawaii or Chicago and some foreigners on our team, which was great. But you nailed it. Like, these guys get real close, and they end up being in each other's wedding as groomsmen, and they're lifelong friends, and it's cool. And I'm very excited just to, because I still grew up in the time I graduated high school in 2005. It was still just so Southern California driven.
Yeah.
The schools to go to were UCI, UC Santa Barbara, UCLA, SC, and the NPSF just dominated the world of volleyball. Then, by the time I graduated, Loyola got really good, which is cool. And then you got this Midwest, but it's so cool to see the South just really get going, like Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted you to talk about the growth of Tennessee in the last maybe like 6 years. And also, you being from Colorado, there is a huge push right now for boys volleyball. So can you kind of touch up on those two states? Because hopefully we can continue to grow. And I hope these universities see this and see what Tennessee's doing. We should do this in Kansas, or we should do this in wherever.
No, I completely agree with you. And for, first off, when I played back in Colorado, I only played volleyball for a single year of high school. I had I had no interest when I first started playing volleyball to make this what it is now. I was literally playing volleyball to not run track. That was the only reason I played. It was for my senior year of high school. And it was fun. I was like, this is kind of cool. I'm not really sure about it. And then I got more and more involved, and I'm like, okay, I think I want to coach. Okay, I think I want to keep playing. Okay, I think I want to stay more involved. And then by the time I got to being a junior in college, I'm having a conversation with one of my college coaches, and he's like, what do you want to do with your life? And I was like, you know what? I really don't know. And, he's like, you seem to love coaching quite a bit. You're always in the gym. And I offered to always help out with the women's program when I was there. And I always coach club. And he's like, why don't you consider coaching college volleyball? And I was like, oh, that's quite the thought. And so I ended up taking that route. But in terms of the growth of, boys volleyball in Colorado, I'm thrilled that they finally made it a sanctioned sport. In my opinion, there's been so many phenomenal athletes out of that state that it should have been something that happened a long time ago. And it is Colorado, I think, in terms of not just the standpoint of, boys high school, but you got to think over the summertime, the amount of tournaments that are up in the mountains that are well known, the amount of tournaments that are just there that are well known is unbelievable that they don't have those at their disposal. So the fact that they're making it, an actual high school sports phenomenal. Our athlete, we have one from Colorado right now, and he was fortunate enough to have, boys high school volleyball. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's super, super cool that, you had that. Cause when I played, it was this weird club sanction, and you're like, yeah, we play. And it had the longest acronym in the history of volleyball acronyms that we just played. And I was like, I don't even know what this is, but I got a t-shirt. So this seems like a pretty cool thing. But then in terms of the growth here, it's wild. Because right now, like I said, King University's been around for, I think, 10, 11 years now. They've been around the block quite a few times. And then Lincoln Memorial, they've been around since 2016, if I remember correctly. And, then we were at it. And what's crazy was not just, us three schools that an hour got started, but then during my time frame since I've been here, just East Tennessee itself, one day was like, hey, we're going to start boys high school volleyball, just out of the blue. And so their first year, they had 7 teams that just wanted to have volleyball. No, it wasn't the prettiest thing I've ever seen in my life, but I'm just like, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You really, really do. And I was super fortunate that I could, get in the gym and actually, kind of show them, like, I'm like, hey, this is what, volleyball looks like. And I'm like training them. And like, I helped out a few athletes. And, unfortunately, due to COVID last year, I was really trying to have a clinic here on campus and have us like bring in all those high school boys and be like, hey, like, come watch a game, come have a free clinic, come experience what this is like. And, maybe this is going to be of interest to you. Maybe you want to play it and continue to, make this a thing. And I think the push has been unbelievable because, as you know, for NCAA sports and America as a whole, we're very much so dominated by, the basketballs, the footballs, even the baseballs. They're a very dominating sport here in America. And the fact that we're pushing this, in my opinion, in Tennessee of all places is phenomenal. And not just that, but, there's a club in Nashville that's been around for quite some time. They're called C2, and they've been around for quite some time. And them and K2, which is a club out of Knoxville, they were a conglomerate the last, I think, 2 years. And this year they decided to separate. But that K2 team has some phenomenal athletes on that team, like some really, really good athletes. And then same thing with the C2 team. They're producing some great athletes, and people really know what they're doing in terms of training. And I think if we have people in the right places, very similar to the women's side, that are really helping push the sport, I think it can grow in a very positive way. And I think that's been, especially starting the men's program and, not really having my eyes open to what it was full circle. I feel like it's very much so a missed opportunity for guys because, you look at it from the women's standpoint, and in the past few years, you have 400,000 female athletes that are playing. And there's tons of opportunities for them. And I think that's mainly due because they're in reputable clubs. And, you guys know very well in California, like you have reputable clubs, you produce quite a few athletes, and those athletes have something to build upon. So, you're producing great athletes at Wave. Like, for example, I had an old teammate from Wave. If he sees my old, like, one of your younger guys, like, oh, I know Brandon Kimbrell, he was phenomenal at Wave. I want to go play at a Belmont Abbey. I want to go play at a great school. I think that inspires kids a lot, because it gives them almost like a mentor without having a mentor to grow into the sport. And I feel like if we can stay on that track here, where we're continuing like that mentor of like, hey, this athlete from Tennessee went to, a phenomenal school, and we're continuing to push that envelope and help them grow, and then also help them find a home. I think that'll help a lot, because a lot of recruiting on the women's side, when I was there, you talk to the recruiting coordinator a million times, then you talk to the parents, and then you talk to the kid, and then you bring them on campus, and they're probably between a freshman or a senior in high school. And with these guys, it's like, I'm talking to guys, my first year here, I talked to every single guy that was deciding between, almost everyone was deciding between, going to a state school or coming to play for me, or maybe another, smaller school that they're just kind of iffy on. And I'm like, if you're really that passionate about playing, like, where's the experience? Where's the recruiting coordinators that can help you and guide you and give you a sense of direction? And I feel like that's something that in some areas, I think it's being missed. I think in states like California, Virginia, New Jersey, Illinois, as well as Florida, those are, just a handful of phenomenal states, and Missouri as well. Like, those are a handful of phenomenal states where they have a lot of clubs, they have a lot of resources, and they help kids find homes. But then you have outliers where you're like, oh no, I forgot about Ohio. They're a really good state too. But if you're about some, like, you have outlier states where you're like, yeah, I saw this athlete play. So you're just talking to the kid one-on-one, and you like never talk to the recruiting coordinator. You hardly you talk to the parents on the visit, and you're like, I'm just recruiting the kid. Like, when you're really recruiting, you're recruiting a family, and you're recruiting them to want to come play for you. And I feel like with a lot of my first year, I was like, recruiting the kid, recruit the kid, recruit the kid. And yeah, I talked to a lot of recruiting coordinators, but like once I was like, got the names, it's like the kid the entire time. And you're like, this is so much different. And I feel like that guidance is huge, because if they had, I think if my guys, a few of them had a little bit more guidance, they could have found themselves homes much sooner than, late spring of their senior years, where it's like choosing between me, and they're like, okay, well, I can go there, or I'll be a normal student somewhere. And so I think that's something that's going to be really important for the years to come, especially for the HBCUs, as well as for our continual growth here in Tennessee, is, if we can get a few guys that are, not just from our state, but from these other states that are, finding athletes that are like, oh, that kid went to Tusculum and, they already, they had a freshman All-American. That's great. I want to go to Tusculum. Then it kind of starts selling itself, and you kind of find your own sense of marketing through the kids. But I think that push initially from, finding kids homes and being able to really help guide them is a very important step forward for the men's side and for our sport, because I think a lot of them need it. And I think you guys, I would assume, because I have friends myself that are unbelievable at volleyball, just unbelievable. And I'm like, why? I'm like, oh yeah, where'd you play in college? And like, I didn't go to college. Like I didn't play. I was a normal student. I went here and that was the end of my story. Like I finished playing in high school, and I'm like, God, man, like you probably would have started where I played at, or you probably could have started at a big school. And they're like, yeah, I just really didn't want to go. And I think that's really tough for people to stomach when you have so much talent and it's just kind of being put by the wayside.
Yeah, I think you hit on a couple of things there that sparked my interest. One was when you're talking about how you got started. I think that's how a lot of us got started with volleyball. Is it just happened to be an opportunity.
Yeah.
And maybe it fell at a time where you didn't want to do a different sport. For me, it fell at a time where I didn't have a sport and somebody else asked me to come try out. We've kind of asked most of the men's coaches we've had on here, and that seems to be a story for almost all of them. Well, it was at a different time than basketball, so I tried it out, and then they kind of stuck with it. So like you said, giving them those opportunities, so having it grow in high school and allowing them the chance to play. I know I've tried introducing it to some of my middle schoolers, and again, even if I can hook one or two that will take it on as they move to high school and move away from, baseball or
no, for sure. Yeah.
Something else. That's kind of the goal. And I think the other part there right at the end is I can definitely think of people that I played with that, they maybe went and played at junior college a little bit. And then, they just went on, to school. They didn't really even think about playing, but if they had the same opportunities now, at least with all the different colleges, I even think now too, even if I would have known some of the colleges that had other opportunities, I would have probably explored it more. But like Kevin said, you kind of get in this little bubble of, oh, the MPSF is really good. That's where I want to play. I live in California, and you just don't look outside of it. But I know that's something that we're hoping to kind of push. And I know Kevin pushes it as a recruiting coordinator. There's so many great options out there, now, and it just keeps growing. So, it's great to hear how it's growing there and growing high school in Colorado. I think those things are really important. Sometimes too, I think we see it shrinking in certain areas and it gets frustrating. So to know it's growing in other areas, we can deal with some of that shrinkage in other spots if it's going to grow, exponentially in other places. So.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if you guys ever, a few years back, Minnesota, they made it just a high school sanctioned sport out of the blue. And I think that route's phenomenal, where they literally just said, they're like, hey, we're going to make this a high school sanctioned sport, and we're going to start just from ground zero. And let's see how many people are interested. And they had 20 plus teams in their first year that just wanted to play boys high school volleyball. And, they've had athletes that have left and gone to college at places. They actually have quite a few, kids that are, coming up in the ranks there. And I'm like, why don't we all just take that route? Like, you don't have to add anything. You already have poles. You already have the volleyball net. You already have volleyballs. And who uses the gym in the springtime? No one.
Yeah.
No one. The gym just stays empty in the springtime. Why not use it as an opportunity to give, kids more opportunities? Mm-hmm. Not everyone, I'll be honest, I ran track when I was a junior in high school, and I'm like, this sucks. I don't like running. I don't like being out in the cold all the time. Practice is running. Competing is running, and we're still running, and then you're just kind of done. And I'm like, this isn't fun for me. And I think that team camaraderie is my big thing. I love being a part of a team as a whole. And so when they just said volleyball, it was back, my mom gives me an ultimatum, and she's like, either you're doing track or you're going to get a part-time job. And I'm like, well, I work. I'm like, I've been working since was 14 years old, with a real job. I already know how to do that. So I might as well just go back to working. And it was that or track. And I was like, all right, well, here we go. And then literally the next day they're like, hey, there's volleyball, tryouts if people are interested. And I was like, don't know. We're just going to go for it. let's see where it takes us. And it's been this really cool journey. And I think the fun part for me was, I first started up, and like I remember, I can literally like give you like remnants of like my first few days where like they're teaching us how to do approaches, and I'm like, what is this? Like, what do you mean left, right, left? Like, what do you? Okay, I'll try it. And then like your athleticism kind of helps you out a little bit, and like your first time like hitting down on a ball, and you're like, whoa, that was me. Like, how did I do that? And then like doing jump serves and all this stuff. And I think just the challenge that it brought in my life was really, really positive for me, because it just kind of took hold.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just something different for a lot of people. And, I've had kids, and I mean, there was some frustration as a high schooler. I would have maybe liked to do some other sports in the spring. There were so many different things, but I think, like you said, it gave an opportunity to, some people might have been able to make those other teams and been fine, but I can think of people too, and myself probably included, even like, I don't know how well I would have done playing baseball.
Yeah.
I might have been on the team, but I might have also been just sitting on the bench a lot on a baseball team. Whereas volleyball, like I got to really be, a captain of a team. And I can think of players that I grew up playing Little League with, the same thing. They decided to keep playing volleyball because it was definitely an opportunity for them to play. Whereas some of the other sports, they really would have been on the bubble, or they would have been out. And then, like you said, they're then working, or they're just out of an extracurricular, which is, really too bad, because those team sports is a great way to learn how to deal with life, later on. And
absolutely.
Can't say how many different types of job interviews you can go into. And that's one thing they want to know is, did you play team sports? Like, how does that affect your life? So, it seems like a simple enough thing just to sanction it. And like you said, why is it a big deal if there's only 20 teams, or why, if there's only 7 teams in Eastern Tennessee?
Yeah, just go for it.
At least that's 70 plus kids right there that are getting a chance to play. So all right, this was a great portion of this interview. We love talking growth of the game. I think there are many great male athletes out there who maybe just aren't quite finding their spot in certain sports, and volleyball could provide that for them. So if you're somebody out there who's trying to advocate for this, not only do you have places like First Point on your side, but you have resources like Coach Eddie here who are doing it, a little bit on his own and from his own experience. But he made the very simple argument: if you're a high school that has girls volleyball, you know what? You already have a gym, you already have poles, you have a net, you got volleyballs. You know what? Just go and say, hey, we need to try and start this and make it happen. Nobody's using that gym in the spring, and so let's take and add another sport and give some boys some more opportunities in sports. So tomorrow we'll be back with Coach Eddie, and we'll continue to talk men's volleyball, talk a little bit more in depth about his program, where it's headed, and some of his goals for the next few years. So anyways, thank you guys so much for listening today. Hit subscribe, like, follow us at Valuable Coaching, and we look forward to bringing you more content tomorrow. Hey, check out our sponsors, One Stone Apparel, onestoneapparel.com. They make great apparel for camps, clinics, physical education, whatever your needs might be, even uniforms if you need them. Talk to Dave at One Stone Apparel.